10 cold cases confessions that will shock you. What makes people confess after they've gotten away with murder? Some are racked by guilt, haunted by sprites of those they have laid low. Others are opportunists, who admit to vile acts only to reduce sentences, or even achieve immunity from prosecution. Still others are taken down by the confessions of their accomplices, family, or those they believe are friends. Occasionally authorities ignore the confessions of murders for years, even decades. 1. Undercover confession. A man who killed his ex-partner and her 3-year-old daughter and buried their bodies under a bridge has been found guilty of their murders. After 4.5 hours of deliberation, a jury at Auckland High Court found Gamal Reddy guilty of murdering Pakiza Yusuf and her daughter, Jawaria Jojo Kalim. Reddy, 43, was unflinching as the verdicts were read out. He will be sentenced next month. Jawaria's father, Muhammad Faisal, said he had been waiting for this day for a long time. I am glad they found him guilty. He should be put away for a long time. It had been a long and stressful wait to find out how and why his daughter was killed, he said. I can put this behind me finally, now I know what happened. A long time I have been waiting for this day. What comes next I don't know, I'll just have to wait and see. It's pretty daunting. Justice Rainer Asher told the jurors, "This has been an ordeal for you. Bear that in mind and look after yourselves over the next few days." Jawaria and her mother were found buried under the Takapuna Overbridge in Auckland's North Shore in October 2014, but the Crown said they were killed at the end of 2006, or early 2007. Reddy claimed the confession was a sham, and it was only made under intense pressure from police who targeted him in an extensive investigation. He told the court the real killer was a part Indian man called James, who was in a relationship with Ms. Yusuf at the time. The jury rejected that explanation, preferring the one Reddy himself unwittingly made to undercover police during a secretly recorded interview in a Wellington apartment. He said he had strangled Ms. Yusuf with the cord of an electrical iron before smothering Jojo with a pillow. He wrapped the cord around her neck once and tightened it until she stopped breathing, Crown Prosecutor Natalie Walker said. There was likely to be minimal struggle, no noise and no blood. The Crown said Reddy killed the woman out of anger that she had made a scene in front of his family, jealousy that she may have been seeing someone else, and resentment that he had paid a deposit for the Howick flat and was being shunned by Ms. Yusuf. He killed Jojo because she would have inevitably outed him as the killer, Ms. Walker said. After the murders, Reddy frantically drove around Bombay Hills south of Auckland, looking for a suitable area to dispose of them. When the search proved fruitless, he called his uncle Bal Naidu in the early hours of the morning and drove to his paper Toto address. Mr. Naidu told the court that Reddy admitted killing his girlfriend and her daughter and said they were under a blanket in the boot of his Subaru. The pair drove to the North Shore spot where the bodies were found, and Mr. Naidu pointed out a couple of locations by the bridge that would be suitable. 24 hours later Reddy went back and dug for hours before dumping the victims side by side. For more than 7 years, the mother and daughter lay covered in stone and mud. Their disappearance was only noted by police when Ms. Yusuf's mother made a missing persons report in 2013. Reddy came under the microscope after they discovered he had appeared in Manuka District Court in 2007, charged with threatening to kill Ms. Yusuf and assaulting her ex-husband with a machete. Bank data showed someone had been taking large cash sums from the victim's account since her disappearance too, but nothing conclusively pointed to the defendant. It was only after undercover police officers gained Reddy's trust over the course of a 6-month operation that they got the evidence they needed. Outside court, Detective Sergeant Stephen Nightingale made special mention of the work done by Crown prosecutors Natalie Walker and Luke Clancy. He also praised the investigation team, several of whom were in court for the verdicts. "It's been a long road and I'm really proud of them," he said. Mr. Nightingale also spoke on behalf of the victim's family. Pakiza was the eldest daughter in a family of 5 children. She was beautiful, caring and a wonderful mother to Jawaria, he said. "We're extremely pleased this offender will now be held accountable for his terrible actions. We would never wish for anyone to go through what we have and are thankful our questions have finally been answered and can now begin to move forward with our lives." Ms. Yusuf's uncle Firaz Muhammad told the Herald, "Every day we have sat here for the 3-week trial and listened to everything they have said, and today when they announced the verdict, I cried. The man who has done this is guilty and it gives us closure." He said Ms. Yusuf's mother and father had been in the court to hear the verdicts. "We all just don't really know what to say. This afternoon we will all get together and do a prayer for Pakiza and Jojo to rest in peace because we know that justice has been done." 2. guilt tracked Wright. The Utah man who confessed Sunday to a 1994 murder in Kelso will not fight his extradition to Cowlitz County for a slaying that new documents show was even more brutal than first reported. Police say Brandon David Wright, 44, made his first appearance Friday morning in Utah. Cowlitz County Prosecutor Ryan Drevakainen estimated it could take 1 to 2 weeks for Wright to be booked into the Cowlitz County Jail. He's been charged with first-degree murder. He could get life in prison. Wright, according to police, walked into the Salt Lake County Jail on Sunday night and confessed to fatally stabbing 45-year-old Robert Bushy. His confession could solve one of Kelso's oldest cold cases. Other details about the case emerged Friday. Boucher, a welder and pipe fitter for Longview contractor J.H. Kelly, was found dead in his trailer on August 31, 1994, buried under a pile of blankets. An autopsy revealed Bushy had 53 stab wounds to his torso, neck and head and dated his death to August 27, according to documents filed in Cowlitz County Superior Court. Previous accounts said Bushy had been stabbed at least 10 times. Wright has an extensive criminal past beginning in the early 90s, including at least 6 alcohol or drug-related charges and aggravated assault with a weapon. According to court documents, Wright told investigators Sunday that he'd been on the run from the law in Utah and had been in Kelso for years. Hungry, he broke out a window of a travel trailer owned by a man named Bob, but Bob interrupted him. Wright said he hit Bob with a hammer and stabbed him multiple times, according to the document. According to a court document, Wright then stole Bushy's welder and drove his car to Portland, where he abandoned it behind the Portland Meadows racetrack. Wright told investigators that he sold the welder for meth. He was arrested in Portland for a controlled substance possession August 28, 3 days before Bushy's body was found. Kelso police say Wright had never been a suspect before his confession. Captain Dare Cook said there is physical evidence connecting Wright to the case, but he declined to describe it. Drevakainen said Wright has been charged with first-degree murder rather than first-degree manslaughter because he allegedly killed Bushy in the act of burglarizing his trailer. The burglary essentially elevates his crime from manslaughter, generally defined as reckless killing, to murder. Both are Class A felonies and carry a statutory maximum of life in prison. It's uncertain how Wright's criminal history could affect his sentencing. Charges could be amended or others added as Wright's case moves forward. 3. Fear of hell. The woman who led Elizabethtown police to a 2-day search of land on East Railroad Avenue last weekend says her uncle confessed to committing 2 murders just hours before he died. Pamela Reinhardt of Elizabethtown said Larry Sherrod, her uncle, told her February 1 he shot and killed 2 men over drug deals gone bad. He died at 3 a.m. the next day, she said. He said, "They screwed me on my drugs and I screwed them." Reinhardt said Sherrod told her she had taken care of Sherrod, 60, during the last part of his life. He said he didn't want to go to hell, she said. He had been going to church some and confessing his sins. He wanted to clear his conscience before he died. Reinhardt said Sherrod confessed to the 1988 killing of Thomas Jefferson Jones Jr., 29. Jones' badly decomposed body was found by explorers in an Eastview cave more than a year after he was reported missing. It has been an unsolved case since May 14, 1988, when Jones was reported missing by family members. Hardin County Sheriff's Department Detective Sergeant Rex Lemon said Sherrod was long considered a person of interest in the Jones killing. He was one of the last people seen with Jones, Lemon said. "We have never been able to get everything corroborated." In a July 28, 1997, article in the News Enterprise about Jones' death, Sherrod was interviewed for the story, calling Jones a rogue and a thief. "He ran with people I wouldn't even want to socialize with," Sherrod told the newspaper. Lemon said the Jones case has been reopened. In the article, Sherrod denied spending time with Jones earlier in the day on May 14, 1988. "I'm positive I was not with him on the day he disappeared," Sherrod said then. Others said he was seen with Jones in a van and left the area for about 2 hours. Reinhardt said Sherrod told her he shot Jones. Then, he said, he and 3 other men cut carpet, rolled Jones in it and took him to the cave. "Some of the details of what he told me, only a person who was there would know," Reinhardt said. Lemon said he couldn't comment on how Jones' body was found in the cave. Reinhardt said Sherrod also admitted to killing a man and burying him on his East Railroad Avenue property. EPD, City Public Works, The Hardin County Coroner's Office and 2 archaeologists spent about 18 hours last Friday and Saturday digging and searching the vacant lot at 211 East Railroad Avenue. EPD initially reported no possible human remains were found, but Friday afternoon it issued a news release stating the excavation did in fact turn up small pieces of bone that are being analyzed to determine if they are animal or human. Sergeant Tim Cleary said the bones have been sent to the state medical examiner's office in Louisville. Officials are unsure when test results will be available. There were some remnants of bones found, he said. We don't know if they are human or not. Ryan Hart did not know the name of the person Sherrod said he killed and buried on his property, a plumber. Sherrod owned a backhoe, and neighbors said last week he was seen digging on his property when he lived there. Ryan Hart said Sherrod told her he killed that man in 1998, or 1999, prior to serving a 7-year jail sentence. He was in and out of jail, she said. Larry had a good heart. If he liked you and he would do anything for you. Ryan Hart said Sherrod attacked her in July and choked her. She said he suffered from paranoia and schizophrenia and blamed the outburst on the wrong dosage of medication. She said media reports of the search were unnerving. She said she didn't call police sooner because of Sherrod's estate and because he was so heavily sedated, he couldn't speak or write. I am not coming forward for fame or glory, she said. It's just the right thing to do. It was a Christian thing to do. He was still my uncle and I still love him and I still miss him, she added. Alaman said the longer a cold case is open, the less time is devoted to it, unless something of significance jumps up at you like a deathbed confession. He said he is unsure if anyone else who may have been involved in the Jones killing is still alive or lives in the area. He said individuals can be charged and tried post-mortem, but admitted it is rare. The goal is still to close a cold case, Alaman said. There is still closure and resolutions for the victims' families. The goal is always to close a cold case. 4. The coldest case. The man convicted in the oldest cold case ever brought to court broke into a wide grin as a judge ordered him released from prison Friday and granted him a new trial. Jack McCulloch, 76, was serving a life sentence for the 1957 murder of 7-year-old Maria Ridolph. Judge William Brady threw out the conviction after a prosecutor found clear and convincing evidence that McCulloch was wrongly found guilty. He was freed shortly after the hearing and was whisked away in a car driven by a family member. After the judge's ruling, McCulloch turned toward his stepdaughter, Janie O'Connor, and flashed her a private signal that she says means I love you. She was seated behind him and broke into tears but managed a big smile back. Across the aisle, Charles Ridolph, the older brother of the victim, frowned and bowed his head. More than 58 years ago, he helped search for Maria after she vanished from a street corner near their home while playing in the snow with a friend. McCulloch's lawyers and DeKalb County State's Attorney Richard Schmack argued that McCulloch's conviction was based on false testimony, improper legal rulings controlling the evidence presented, and a timeline that was tweaked some 50 years after the fact to rule out McCulloch's alibi. McCulloch has long insisted that he couldn't possibly have abducted and killed the child because he was 40 miles away in Rockford, Illinois, talking to recruiters and trying to enlist in the U.S. Air Force when she was taken. He repeated the alibi when he spoke with CNN in prison in March 2013. They proved nothing, he said at the time. I am in here for murder. A murder I could not have done. McCulloch said that when Maria was kidnapped, the telephone in his home in Sycamore was ringing, and I was on the other end of that phone, in Rockford, 3 minutes before she was kidnapped. Try and make that happen. Only Scotty could make that happen, if he beamed me up. Jack McCulloch, in prison after his 2012 conviction. Now a judge has ordered him freed. An Illinois appeals court upheld his conviction last year, but McCulloch made a last-ditch appeal in a jailhouse motion last December, saying police and prosecutors buried evidence supporting his alibi. He asked the judge to find him innocent. Schmack, who inherited the case from predecessor Clay Campbell, was placed in the position of having to defend the conviction. He launched a 6-month investigation that included a review of some 4,500 pages of documents, old police and FBI reports, grand jury transcripts, trial transcripts, affidavits for search and arrest warrants, and even CNN's 5-part series on the case. taken, which raised questions about whether the courtroom reconstruction of history was unfairly one-sided. Schmack concluded that he'd found clear and convincing evidence that McCulloch had been convicted of a crime he didn't commit. The precise time of Maria's abduction has been in dispute almost from the beginning. The dark-haired second grader with big brown eyes was with her playmate, Kathy Sigmund, on December 3, 1957, when they were approached by a stranger who said his name was Johnny. He gave Maria 2 piggyback rides, Sigmund told police at the time. Sigmund, now a grandmother known as Kathy Chapman, said she went home to fetch her mittens. When she returned, Maria and Johnny were gone. More than 600 volunteers combed the fields and woods around Sycamore in search of Maria, at times walking hand in hand in a grid pattern. And within 24 hours, dozens of FBI agents descended on the small farming community about 65 miles west of Chicago. Agents interviewed some 200 possible suspects, including McCulloch, who passed a polygraph test about his alibi and was cleared. Despite the work of nearly 36 FBI agents, the investigation turned up no solid leads to Maria's whereabouts. Her body was discovered 144 days later by a couple looking for mushrooms near the Iowa border. She was under a fallen tree, some 100 miles from home. Because Maria apparently never left Illinois, the FBI pulled out of the investigation and the case went cold for half a century. The Illinois State Police began to look into the Ridolph case again in 2008, after McCulloch's half-sister, Janet Tessier, emailed a tip. She said her dying mother had pulled her close some 14 years earlier and whispered, "Those 2 little girls, and the one that disappeared. John did it. John did it, and you have to tell someone." McCulloch was questioned in Seattle and arrested in late June 2011. A judge hearing the case without a jury found McCulloch guilty after a week-long trial. Schmack, the state's attorney, said he sat through the trial and always doubted whether there was enough evidence to support the conviction. In his review of the case, he said he found new evidence that verified McCulloch's long-standing alibi. He subpoenaed records from AT&T and found that a collect call had indeed been placed at 6:57 p.m. to McCulloch's home in Sycamore, from a payphone at the post office in downtown Rockford on December 3, 1957, just as McCulloch said he had done. At his sentencing, McCulloch vehemently professed his innocence. "Look in the box. The truth is in the box," he said, pointing to a cardboard box in the courtroom. It was filled with old FBI reports and other documents that the judge, James Halleck, kept from the trial, saying it was inadmissible hearsay. 5. Gangster's deathbed confession. Billy the Mouse McCulkin allegedly confessed on his deathbed in 2011, to murdering his wife and daughters and burying their bodies, according to a witness who came forward to police only recently. It's a puzzling new twist in the saga of the cold case murders of his estranged wife Barbara, 34, and their 2 daughters Vicky Marie, 13, and Barbara Leanne, 11, who disappeared from their Highgate Hill cottage overnight on January 16, 1974. Police have taken a statement, but it's at odds with their investigation so far. Billy, a petty gangster, took up with another woman just 2 months before his former partner, and her girls disappeared, and although a suspect at the time, was later excluded. The Supreme Court in Brisbane on Friday refused bail to Gary Reginald Shorty Du Bois, 67, who was charged alongside Vincent O'Dempsey with the McCulkin killings in October last year. Both men faced 3 counts of murder and deprivation of liberty and are due in court again on March 30. O'Dempsey, 76, of Warwick, and Du Bois, of Torbanley, near Hervey Bay, were originally charged with the triple murder in 1980 but walked free after the case against them fell apart. At the bail hearing on Friday, Justice Peter Applegarth made an order preventing any witnesses from being named and sealed the affidavits tendered by police due to fears of witness intimidation. Du Bois and O'Dempsey were allegedly gangsters, members of the Clockwork Orange Gang, who orchestrated the firebombing of Torino's nightclub on Ann Street, Brisbane, on February 25, 1973. It came just before the notorious Whiskey A Go Go nightclub fire in Fortitude Valley, in which 15 people perished, in Australia's then worst mass murder. James Finch and John Stewart were ultimately convicted of the crime, but rumors ran riot that the O'Dempsey's Clockwork Orange boys were somehow involved. The court was told Barbara knew too much about the gang's involvement in the Torino's nightclub fire. Those involved allegedly feared police would connect it to the killer Whiskey A Go Go blaze. She also allegedly started mouthing off about what she knew. Crown prosecutor David Meredith argued in court on Friday that Barbara's loose lips were proof of motive for her killing. A witness allegedly saw O'Dempsey and Du Bois at the McCulkins' home on Dorchester Street on the night the women went missing. Later, Du Bois allegedly told a key witness he was going back there to have sex with the McCulkins, and asked him to join him. The offer was declined. The court was told an eyewitness saw one of the McCulkin girls return home to the house later that night around 10:15 p.m. Mr. Meredith said the girls were not supposed to have been there when their mother was allegedly targeted. Du Bois is alleged to have confessed to witness 1 that he and O'Dempsey took the McCulkin women for a drive, tied them up and killed them. The court was told Du Bois allegedly told the witness the McCulkins had been buried and he had assisted. Witness 1, who through his statements may have indemnity from prosecution for alleged involvement in the Torino's fire, also claimed he helped to relocate O'Dempsey's belongings in the aftermath of the murders. But barrister Dennis Lynch, for Du Bois and instructed by Peter Sagers, said the evidence of witness 1 was contradicted by evidence from witness 6, who could remember no such confession. Mr. Lynch said the evidence of witness 1, an alleged associate of O'Dempsey and Du Bois who came forward in 2014, was at the heart of the Crown case. He said any admission by his client to witness 1 did not amount to a confession, and the most the Crown could say of Du Bois' alleged involvement was that he was a party to the killings. The court also heard evidence from another witness who claimed Du Bois made an admission about the alleged murders during a phone call following the airing of a television show in 1980. He allegedly told another witness the police would never find their bodies. Du Bois allegedly fled Brisbane on January 22, 1974. Due to the pressure of the McCulkin disappearance and a concern he would be improperly implicated in the killings. Mr. Lynch argued Billy McCulkin had been violent to his wife Barbara in the past, allegedly telling her employer in 1973 that she wouldn't be at work because he gave her a hiding. But Mr. Meredith said Billy McCulkin had been excluded as a suspect in the past. The witness that has now come forward, police are investigating her statements, but it's at odds with other pieces of evidence in the brief, he said. The court was told Du Bois' wife was willing to put up their family home, worth $300,000, to secure her husband's freedom on remand. Mr. Lynch argued the risk of Du Bois fleeing the jurisdiction was low, given the last time he did so was in 1980, and was unlikely to do so due to his family commitments and ill health. He said the case against Du Bois was circumstantial and not a strong one. Mr. Meredith said the man convicted of the Whiskey A Go Go killings, John Stewart, had lived with the McCulkins for a time. Although the girls were not meant to have been targets, Mr. Meredith said there was evidence the children talked about their father knowing something about Whiskey A Go Go. Mr. Meredith said Du Bois was a danger of interfering with or intimidating witnesses, was closely connected to O'Dempsey and willing to do his bidding. 6. Investigators godsend a Des Moines man's spontaneous confession to a slaying 14 years ago, and 1,500 miles away has solved a long cold murder mystery, Florida detectives said Thursday. Richard Busey's beaten body was found dead in his Wilton Manors, Florida, and apartment in April 2002. Police in the Fort Lauderdale suburb had long since exhausted any leads in the case, before the unexpected confession arrived last month. Joshua Odom, 38, was arrested August 25 after he sought out Des Moines law enforcement to confess to the murder. Authorities with the Broward County Sheriff's Office transferred Odom this week to Florida, where he faces first-degree murder charges. Odom was living at the Bethel Mission homeless shelter on the north side of Des Moines at the time he confessed. He told Des Moines police that God told him to reveal the details he could recall, according to detectives who interviewed him. It doesn't happen often to have somebody come in and confess to a murder that he actually did and have all the details, said John Curtio, a homicide detective with the Broward County Sheriff's Office. Give credit to God, because that's why, Odom said, he wanted to come in and confess. Des Moines police deserve the bulk of the credit for taking the confession seriously and investigating, Curcio said. Details from the August 11th confession were blasted out by Des Moines police to law enforcement agencies across southern Florida. The report jogged the memory of a Wilton Manors police detective. Odom's confession aligned with a 2002 crime scene at Busey's apartment, a case that hadn't seen a viable lead in more than a decade, according to Ricky Libman, a detective with the Broward County Sheriff's Office who flew to Des Moines to interview Odom after obtaining an arrest warrant. If it wasn't for Des Moines detectives who went into great detail, interviewing Odom, Libman said, it probably would have never been picked up. Odom told authorities he was invited to Busey's apartment for drinks and sex. He then decided to murder and rob the 70-year-old man to buy crack cocaine. Odom used a vase or pot to strike him in the head after choking him, according to statements shared with police and documented in an arrest warrant last month. Since the confession, fingerprints collected in 2002 from Busey's apartment have been matched to Odom. DNA samples from the scene also will be tested. A tipster's call in May 2002 described a suspect named Josh and a large tattoo on his chest, who was seen in Busey's apartment. Josh Odom has a tattoo on his chest. Authorities said they followed the lead at the time but were unable to pin down a suspect for charges. Odom told police he couldn't recall the time or exact location of the killing in his confession, although he remembered the apartment, according to authorities. But one key memory tied him to Wilton Manors in April 2002. He remembered getting arrested in the area the following day for stealing a case of beer. Wilton Manors police have records of this April 5, 2002, arrest, which note Odom had swollen and discolored hands. He was released shortly after on a $500 bond for the misdemeanor theft with a scheduled court appearance. He promptly fled the state, according to the Broward detectives. Investigators described Odom as a drifter who is originally from Texas, where he likely relocated after the arrest in Wilton Manors. He then migrated north into Indiana and eventually Iowa. Libman suspects he was in Iowa for a year or two. A search of his name shows no results in Iowa court records prior to the August confession. Officials at the Bethel Mission said they do not comment on specific clients who stay at the facility. The emergency shelter on 6th Avenue allows individuals to stay up to 120 nights in a one-year period. Des Moines Police spokesman Sergeant Paul Parizek described the cooperation between Florida and Des Moines authorities as a needle in the haystack scenario. The report was one of dozens of emails received daily by detectives in the region, he said. Detectives said there are thousands of unresolved cold cases across the country, and it's a challenge to match them with random confessions, especially ones made years later and states away. A lot of people come in and confess to a lot of things. It's not typical that an arrest and a record puts them in the right place at a certain time, Curcio said. 7. Ignored confessions. A Superior Court judge Monday described the evidence against the man accused of killing Joyce McLean and dumping her body near Schenck High School in East Millinocket nearly 36 years ago as solid, but not overwhelming at the conclusion of a bail and probable cause hearing at the Penobscot Judicial Center. Justice Anne Murray found at the end of the hearing, which began last month, there was probable cause for the murder charge filed against Philip Scott Fournier, 55, of East Millinocket. Fournier was arrested without incident March 4, 2016, and since has been held without bail at the Penobscot County Jail. Murray, who tentatively set a trial in January 2018, also set bail at $300,000, but did not specify if she required cash or property. Defense attorney Jeffrey Silverstein of Bangor told Murray during Monday's hearing that his client's family would be able to post $50,000 in property, but did not have the means to post a high cash or surety bail. Assistant Attorney General Lene Zania, who is prosecuting the case, argued Fournier should not be granted bail, in part because his parents are witnesses in the case and he would be living with them. What's troubling here is that Mr. Fournier's parents are significant state's witnesses, she told Murray. We have real concerns about the integrity of the judicial process if he were allowed to return to that residence. Fournier pleaded not guilty June 21 to intentional or knowing murder, and depraved indifference murder in the death of 16-year-old Joyce McLean on August 8, 1980. McLean last was seen that night while jogging. Her beaten body was found 36 hours later under power lines near Schenck High School. She was wearing just her socks and sneakers. The medical examiner found that McLean died of blunt force trauma to the head, according to court documents. Maine State Police Sergeant Daryl Peary, who worked on the case from 2008 to 2014, testified Monday that McLean's body was found face down with her hands tied behind her back with a blue cloth, or cord, and her hair in a ponytail. Her pink jogging outfit, which witnesses had seen her wearing on Friday night, was found in pieces stuffed in the chinks in a nearby stone wall, he said. Located near her body was a rock of some size that was collected, and a ceramic electrical insulator with a metal piece still attached, Peary said. On the same night that McLean went missing, Fournier stole a fuel truck and was in a serious crash that left him in a coma for several weeks at Eastern Maine Medical Center in Bangor. Fournier's mother, Anita Powers, testified last month that her son confessed to killing McLean in 1981, to her and her husband, Wayne Powers. Fournier also allegedly confessed to a former pastor, Vinyl Thomas, and former Maine State Police Detective William Caron. In finding probable cause for the murder charge, the judge cited statements Fournier allegedly made to Caron on May 15, 1981. Murray cited the following. Fournier and a friend were seen at Shanghai School around the time others said they saw McLean jogging near there. He was seen an hour to an hour and a half later running in front of the school, which was 400 to 500 yards from where her body was found. Fournier told police in September 1980 that he was not near the high school and did not know McLean. When interviewed in May 1981, Fournier told Caron he had tripped over her body and said it was face down. He also said her hair was tied back with a ribbon. Fournier also described the insulator found near McLean's body. Fournier told police that when he stole and crashed the oil truck, he was trying to commit suicide. Since that interview, Fournier has denied killing McLean, and has not repeated his confession to law enforcement officers, Silverstein said Monday. Zania told Murray that Fournier has told inmates when he has been incarcerated that he committed the crime. During his more than 25 interviews with police over the years, Fournier has named at least 5 different men, saying they were involved in McLean's death. At times he said he was a witness, other times he was forced to participate. According to a previously published report, the Bangor Daily News is not naming the men because they have not been charged with the crime. Silverstein said Monday that others also have confessed to killing McLean. If convicted of murder, Fournier faces between 25 years and life in prison. 8. Haunted by homicide. A Wisconsin man whose conscience allegedly plagued him for more than 3 decades pleaded guilty on Tuesday to charges in connection with the 1982 death of 13-year-old Carrie Ann Jobeck. Jose E. Ferreira Jr., 51, accepted a plea bargain during a pretrial session and agreed to plead guilty to attempted second-degree sexual assault with use of force and false imprisonment for pushing Jobeck into a basement against her will. The push reportedly caused her to fall down a flight of stairs and die. Ferreira was originally charged with second-degree murder in the Milwaukee girl's death. However, prosecutors offered him a plea deal primarily because of a limited amount of physical evidence. "I just want this over and done with," Ferreira said in court, according to Milwaukee's Weedy TV. The plea deal calls for Ferreira to serve up to 7 years in prison. He will be formally sentenced on March 17. A spokeswoman for the Milwaukee District Attorney's Office told the Huffington Post the agency would not comment prior to sentencing. In a Tuesday interview with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Jobeck's father, Frederick Dusknant, said he was satisfied with the outcome. "It's better than taking a gamble and suffering a complete loss," he said. Jobeck's mother, Carolyn Dusknant, told the Huffington Post earlier that she credits her daughter, not authorities, with solving the case. She said she based that belief on a private conversation she once had with Ferreira, in which he allegedly said he couldn't escape her daughter. "He said he was haunted," she said. "He told me, 'Your daughter's haunting me,' and I believe she was." Ferreira's arrest was based on a series of startling confessions that began on October 11, 2015, when he called a crisis hotline and told the story of a party he attended in the 1980s, where a teenage runaway died in a fall down a flight of stairs. According to a criminal complaint provided to HuffPost by the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, Ferreira said he followed the girl downstairs and had his way with her after she had fallen and died, the complaint alleges. The same day he called the crisis hotline, Ferreira phoned a reporter at WISN 12 News in Milwaukee, telling a story similar to the one he had told the crisis counselor, the complaint says. Also that day, Ferreira's wife walked into the West Milwaukee police station, and told an officer that her husband had shocked her by saying he was responsible for the 1982 killing of a girl, whose body he had buried under a porch. Ferreira's wife stated that, he told her that he hit this female, causing her to fall down the stairs and break her neck, the criminal complaint alleges. The most detailed account of Jobeck's death appears to be the one police said Ferreira gave to investigators on October 13, 2015. According to the complaint, Ferreira was 17 years old at the time of Jobeck's death in 1982, and he said he'd shared marijuana with her at the party. He claimed that Jobeck had asked him to go into the basement, but as the teen stepped onto the stairway, she had second thoughts and told him, "I don't know if this is a good idea," the criminal complaint alleges. The complaint continues. Ferreira states that he looked at Carrie sternly and said, "You are going downstairs." The defendant states that he pushed Carrie down the stairs and observed her body strike the railing and the wall and fall to the basement floor, with her lower legs and feet on the last two steps. Ferreira told investigators he thought the fall had knocked the girl unconscious and saw this as an opportunity, the complaint says. He states that he told Carrie, "You are such a beautiful girl," and proceeded to feel her breasts with his hands over Carrie's clothing. Ferreira realized as he fondled the girl that her neck was broken, according to the complaint. He said he took her body outside and buried it under the porch. Because Carrie had long hair, he could still see some of her hair sticking out of the ground, the complaint alleges. Jobeck's mother, Carolyn Dusknant, reported her daughter missing on March 16, 1982. The same day she learned the 7th grader had been suspended from Kosciuszko Middle School for cutting classes. 17 months later, in August 1983, a contractor working on Dusknant's neighbor's house found the teen's remains buried under the porch. An autopsy cited in the criminal complaint revealed that Jobeck had died as a result of bleeding inside her skull from head and neck injuries. She was found buried in the clothing she was last seen in. A few days after the 1983 discovery, a neighbor told police he saw Ferreira nearby behaving strangely and crying. Police questioned Ferreira at the time, but he denied involvement in Jobeck's death. The criminal complaint says the case likely would have gone unsolved had Ferreira not allegedly confessed to his involvement. Jose confessed, "And it was my daughter haunting him, that made him," Carolyn Dusknant said. When Ferreira entered into the plea agreement on Tuesday, the court was prepared to select a jury for his murder trial. Had he been convicted on that charge, he would have faced a possible sentence of 20 years in prison. 9. Immunity for a monster. Moments after Danny Heinrich abducted Jacob Wetterling on a rural road in Minnesota, the man handcuffed the 11-year-old boy and forced him into a car. Jacob looked at Heinrich and asked, "What did I do wrong?" Soon, Jacob was dead. Giving graphic details in a Minnesota courtroom, Heinrich laid to rest a 27-year-old mystery: what happened to Jacob in 1989, after he was abducted by a masked man holding a gun. Heinrich admitted in court Tuesday that he abducted, sexually assaulted and killed the boy. Now 53, Heinrich made the admission as he pleaded guilty to federal child pornography charges, the Associated Press reported. He told the court that he sexually assaulted the boy in a rural area of Paintsville, near where the assailant lived with his father. During the assault, Heinrich told the court that Jacob said he was cold and wanted to go home, according to CBS affiliate WCCO. Later, Heinrich heard sirens and thought police were headed to his location, WCCO reported, adding, "Heinrich panicked and took out his revolver as Jacob had his back to him. He then pulled the trigger, but the gun didn't go off. He pulled the trigger again, shooting Jacob in the back of the head. He shot a third time, and Jacob collapsed. He buried the boy about 100 yards away and camouflaged the area with leaves and twigs," the app reported. A year later, when he drove by the site, he noticed Jacob's red jacket sticking out of the grave, WCCO reported. He returned later and transferred the remains to a nearby farm. Heinrich also said he sexually assaulted another Minnesota boy, 12-year-old Jared Searle, 9 months before Jacob disappeared. According to the app, Jared survived. Heinrich was never charged in Jacob's death, although he was one of the first people interviewed by investigators. He maintained his innocence for years, and prosecutors never had enough evidence to charge him. But Tuesday, according to the app, Heinrich was asked in court whether he had abducted, sexually assaulted and murdered Jacob. "Yes, I did," he said, with Jacob's parents, Patty and Jerry Wetterling, in the courtroom. The app reported that some of Jacob's relatives wept as Heinrich described the crime. "It's incredibly painful to know his last days, last hours, last minutes," Patty Wetterling said after the guilty plea. According to the app, "To us, Jacob was alive, until we found him." Tuesday's admission was part of a plea deal with federal prosecutors on the child pornography charges. The deal could land Heinrich at a facility where he wouldn't be in as much danger as a convicted sex offender, WCCO reported. As part of the deal, Heinrich will not be charged with Jacob's murder or Jared's assault, According to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, Heinrich is scheduled to be sentenced in November. His maximum sentence is 20 years. Danny Heinrich is no longer a person of interest, U.S. Attorney Andy Luger said in a statement. He is the confessed murderer of Jacob Wetterling, and nearly 27 years after he committed this heinous crime, he has been brought to justice, and Jacob is finally home. Heinrich's testimony capped a week of dramatic developments in Jacob's case, which began last week when Heinrich led investigators to the boy's body in a field in Paintsville. On October 22, 1989, Jacob was abducted by a man wearing a mask and holding a gun. The 11-year-old had been riding bikes with two other boys. The armed man told the trio to lie face down in a ditch and tell him their ages. Then he grabbed Jacob and told the other boys to run and not look back. In the years that followed, police pursued more than 50,000 leads in the case. Each October 22, on the anniversary of Jacob's disappearance, Minnesotans leave their porch lights on. They did the same over Labor Day weekend. As news of the break in the case traveled around the world, Patty Wetterling used her son's disappearance to lobby for better laws tracking sex offenders, and marshaling resources to quickly find missing children. In 1994, the federal Jacob Wetterling Crimes Against Children and Sexually Violent Offender Registration Act led to the creation of a National Sex Offender Registry. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune called the Wetterlings and the foundation they established the driving force behind the registry. The 1989 abduction ended an age of innocence for central Minnesota and beyond, and had a dramatic impact on how parents raise their children, Stearns County Sheriff John Sainer said in a statement Tuesday. The investigation took years, and led to countless dead ends. But, Sainer said, the hope of resolving the case and bringing Jacob home never once faltered. A combination of steadfast determination, science and a unique collaborative effort involving local, state and federal agencies highlighted the value and importance of these relationships. He added, even though the ending is not what we had hoped and prayed for, Jacob is finally home. We have child witness, a mother who was found dead with 16 stab wounds and her throat slit in 1970, went on a blind date with a man who is now accused of raping and killing her, her daughter has revealed. Loretta Jones was 23 years old when authorities found her lying face down near a coffee table in the living room of her home in Price, Utah, naked from the waist down, with her shorts and underwear next to her body. Her 4-year-old daughter, Heidi, was the one who alerted a neighbor after seeing her mother and realizing she was dead. Authorities arrested and questioned a man named Tom Egley at the time, but he walked free after a court found the evidence against him to be lacking. The case stayed dormant for decades, but Heidi kept fighting to bring her mother's killer to justice. Egley, now 76, confessed on Tuesday and said he had slit Loretta's throat because she had denied him sex. According to court documents, Heidi, who is now 50 years old, told the DailyMail.com that her mother had gone on a blind date with Egley after friends set them up. He was set up on a date by some friends with my mom. My mom did not care for him, Heidi said. She had met Egley before her mother's death, although he wasn't there constantly. Tom was an acquaintance of my mom, Heidi said. My mom knew him. He was somebody that my mom knew, that I knew. Egley had a pregnant girlfriend at the time and lived with her, Heidi added. She knows the couple who set up Loretta and Egley but hasn't discussed the case with them. The situation, she said, is awkward. Loretta raised Heidi as a single parent before her death in 1970. Heidi remembers going for ice cream with her, getting in a car with her, and standing next to her while Loretta did some ironing. Heidi also remembers getting up one morning in July 1970, and looking through the keyhole on her bedroom door to see something lying on the floor. When I opened the door, it was my mom's body. There was blood. There was a lot of blood. There was blood everywhere. She was lying in a pool of blood, Heidi said. At that point I knew she was dead and I went outside to go get help. The 4-year-old girl found her neighbor, a boy aged 9 or 10. I told him I thought my mommy was dead. He ran next door and got his mom, Heidi added. She remembers sitting in the kitchen, waiting for her grandparents to get her. Her grandfather, Parley, and her grandmother, Ludi, formally adopted her over the next couple of years. They became her parents, and Loretta's 5 sisters and 3 brothers became Heidi's own siblings. Parley and Ludi did their best to keep their daughter's case on the authorities' radar, but Parley died in 1974, of a heart attack that doctors said was caused by stress. Once my grandpa died, it was too much for my grandma to even pursue, Heidi said. She was mourning the loss of her daughter, then her husband. It was easier to tuck those memories away in her heart. Heidi tried to get her mother's case reopened once before, in 1989. I had this binder of newspaper clippings, things I got on my own. I was writing to the authorities that had worked on my mom's case, trying to get some answers, but I kept hitting brick wall after brick wall, she said. Heidi studied business and accounting in college, taking after Loretta, who at the time of her death was taking correspondence classes to become an accountant. She eventually moved from Utah to California in 1986, and spent 20 years in San Jose, working in real estate. Heidi came back to Utah in 2006, to be closer to her family, especially her grandmother, whose health was declining. Moving back stirred up her desire to get her mother's case back on the radar once again. Heidi had nightmares as a child but never flashbacks, even though she wished for them. I wanted to remember more. I wanted to remember what I couldn't remember, she said. Maybe there was something that was buried in my brain that, if it came out, could help solve this case quicker. Maybe there was something I needed to remember. Finally, in 2009, Heidi struck up a conversation with a detective at an art festival in Helper, Utah. I briefly told him about how my mom was murdered and he said, "Okay, give me a call on Monday." And that I did. Detective David Brewer, of Carbon County, began working on the case again. But it wasn't until 2015, that the investigation made real progress. Heidi's grandmother died in May 2015. She had always supported Heidi's efforts to have Loretta's case reopened, but had been very protective of Loretta's belongings, making it hard to use them in the investigation. Down in her grandmother's basement, Heidi found the coffee table and the stereo that were in Loretta's living room on the day of her death. She also made the decision to have her mother's body exhumed, something her grandmother had not approved of. When authorities exhumed Loretta's body this spring, Egley asked his neighbor Lisa Carter how long DNA evidence and semen could last. According to court documents, he decided to come clean to investigators after talking more with her. The affidavit states, Carter arranged for Egley to meet with Carbon County investigators at his home in Rocky Ford, Colorado. Investigators had received an anonymous phone tip in 1970, leading them to Egley. At the time, Egley admitted to being in Price on the night of Loretta's death but denied visiting her and could not get anyone to confirm his alibi. Court documents state, Egley was arrested in 1970, in connection to the case. An archive photo published by the Sun Advocate shows a younger Egley being escorted by Price City Chief of Police Art Poloni. Earlier this month, Egley told authorities that he had slit Loretta's throat. Court documents state, he gave a further confession on Tuesday, according to the charging documents. I was there for sex. I was turned down for sex. It made me feel like shit. She went to the kitchen or something after that. And when she came back I stabbed her. In the living room, she fell in front of the couch, Egley said according to investigators. He told authorities Jones was still alive when he had sex with her. The court documents state, Egley then cut her throat and left. According to the account of his confession, Egley will have an extradition hearing Monday to bring him back to Utah, where he will face murder and rape charges. It's like a dream come true. After 46 years, and telling my story over and over again, finally, not only is he caught, he confesses, Heidi said. I've known it all my life. I've always known it. My story has never ever changed. Heidi, who visits her mother's grave every month in Elmo, plans to attend every court session she is allowed to witness. Every single chance that I can be there, I will be there. I'm gonna get to every court session that I possibly can. I will make him not want to see my face, she said. I couldn't wait to see his mugshot and now I cannot wait to be in court with him. Heidi says the case will not be over for her until the sentencing hearing. I want to be in his face as much as possible to remind him of what he did to my mom, and why he's sitting where he's sitting, she said. It's to remind him. I was a 4-year-old little girl when he did what he did to my mom. My mom was a human being.